Bill Gates doesn't just want to change your diet, he wants to control what you eat. He's invested really heavily in companies that make fake, synthetic, lab-grown meat, and he's bought up a huge amount of farmland in the US so he can create monoculture, glyphosate-soaked stock to feed to things like bugs and fake meat. Problem is, humans like you and me don't need fake food to be healthy. Real food has worked for centuries, and there's plenty of land to grow it. I say this as a regenerative farmer. So what's the real conspiracy? It's that nature already perfected food, and we don't need a billionaire to invest in companies to fix it, especially a billionaire who is clearly not doing well from a longevity perspective. Look at the food pyramid. It's been around since 1974, but the country's been getting fatter and sicker as a country ever since 1970. It could be a coincidence, but obesity and the standard American diet have been holding hands in the charts for 55 years now. The standard diet is built out of processed high-carb foods designed to get you addicted and to cost as little as possible so that they can charge as much as possible. Bill Gates' heavy investment in processed plant-based alternatives is perpetuating a system that means profits matter more than your kids' health and more than your health. And maybe somewhere inside there is good intentions and a true belief that somehow destroying cows and chickens and dairy and feeding you peasant food is good for you. I don't think that's the case. That's because a Harvard study found that high-carb diets are linked to chronic diseases like diabetes and heart disease. And the carb-based approach with cheap oils and cheap carbs, it's profitable for big food companies, but it's devastating for human health, for your brain, and it increases medical expenses, and it makes you rely on pharmaceuticals. Guess who's invested in those pharmaceutical companies? Yeah, the guy who's telling you not to eat meat. When you emphasize foods like grass-fed meats and organic veggies, your diet can restore balance and reduce inflammation, and then you feel good. And when you feel good, you don't do dumb things that someone tells you to do for your health because you know it's not worth it. Studies show that when you switch to low glycemic foods, these are foods that don't raise your blood sugar, it'll improve your insulin sensitivity, and that breaks the cycle of metabolic dysfunction. If you know any other reasons why Bill Gates hates my diet, other than that, well, it breaks his pharmaceutical profits and his farmland profits, and, well, I think it breaks his agenda in general. But if I'm missing anything that you think is important to mention, drop a comment below and let's talk about it. It's no secret that most people aren't eating a diet that's best for their health and for their unique biology. And it's becoming more and more expensive to do that. It's becoming expensive for a reason by a plan. At least that's what it looks like, and I'm really concerned. And if you're eating food that's not good for you, it's not actually your fault. The entire commercial food industry has been engineering their products for taste and texture and addictiveness since the end of World War II. And big food companies love keeping you in a cycle of hunger and cravings. How do we know that? Because big tobacco companies bought 3 of the largest processed food companies in the 1980s, and they are experts in addiction. And now Gates' push for lab-grown and synthetic foods ignores the critical role of whole, nutrient-dense foods in breaking free from addictive eating patterns. Processed snacks spike your blood sugar, and then it crashes, and then you're back on the treadmill reaching for more junk. In one experiment, participants eating processed foods ate 500 more calories per day than people eating normal foods. And when you do things like artificial additives in those snacks, they hijack your brain's reward centers, so it's almost impossible to stop eating. That's why I was obese. That's why obesity and metabolic syndrome rates have skyrocketed over the last few decades. When you try my diet, focusing on nutrient-dense foods, not necessarily whole foods, you can take off the toxic parts, you provide your body with real nourishment that naturally regulates hunger hormones. That means animal-based proteins, animal-based fats, and safe veggies and some fruit and not too many carbs. On the opposite front, you have Gates' approach to nutrition that doesn't even come from a human nutrition perspective. It's almost like Someone wrote computer code and thinks you're a meat robot, and you're not. Gates' concern is, how do we produce the food we're currently eating? And he wants to engineer a more efficient way to produce the basics that are behind all modern processed foods. Bad oils, cheap proteins, and cheap carbs, regardless of the toxic load and regardless of their effects on your biology. As long as you'll eat it and it tastes good and it's very cheap, good for him, bad for you. Things like seed oils and vegetable oils like canola oil, rapeseed oil, refined sugars, and high fructose corn syrup, we're not supposed to be eating those. All of those products are very cheap to make, which is why they're so common and they're efficient compared to things that are expensive to make, like dairy fat, butter, animal fat, regeneratively grown animal protein, and whole fruits and vegetables. The real enemy isn't fat, it's fake fats, it's tons of sugar, and it's chemicals. Bill Gates is heavily promoting these innovative food solutions like fake meats and oils, but he's not addressing the damage of inflammatory seed oils and sugars, because that's not relevant. In fact, it might be good for you if you're heavily invested in companies with drugs for diabetes. Vegetable oils like canola and corn oil, they're cheap, but they're not good for you. They're linked to inflammation and even Alzheimer's disease. A study in Nature connected seed oils to metabolic dysfunction, yet you'll still see heart healthy right on the label, which gives you a license to make money by selling foods that we know are bad for us. A recent study just came out linking seed oils to increases in colorectal cancer. Funny enough, that is happening at younger and younger aging. That used to be cancer for old people, now it's happening in kids. It's because these oils oxidize easily and they produce harmful free radicals that damage cells right there in the colon. Meanwhile, sugar in processed foods contributes to insulin resistance, which sets you up to get diabetes at a younger and younger age. What if we replace those weird things that no one's eaten throughout most of history with clean, anti-inflammatory fat? Things like grass-fed butter, grass-fed tallow, wild-caught low-mercury seafood, even some olive oil. You could support your cellular function and your longevity, and you feel good all the time, and your body works, and maybe your testosterone levels return to normal. One thing a lot of people are surprised by is that I grew abs in my 40s by drinking butter in my coffee every morning, not soybean oil. In fact, putting butter in my coffee led me on a journey to lose over 100 pounds of body fat, and it got so popular that athletes and Hollywood celebrities and actors and hedge fund managers all started drinking it. Putting butter in my coffee was just one way I changed my body. If you want to see everything else I did to go from the 300-pound computer hacker to an abundantly healthy 5% body fat without needing to exercise a lot guy, hit the subscribe button below. Some people will try to justify highly processed, lab-grown food by saying, it's better for the environment. Well, they tried to say that stuff was a healthier alternative for a little while, but science proved them wrong, so then they had to shift gears. Food tech investments prioritize lab-grown and synthetic foods over real regenerative farming. Regenerative farming builds soil, and it distributes food, and it helps increase environmental diversity. Gates' philosophy says we should have industrial food systems that degrade health, and they degrade sustainability. And what they do is they remove all life except for corn, genetically modified corn, for hundreds or thousands of acres where nothing lives but weak soil propping up chemically soaked corn. No deer, no frogs, no bunnies, nothing cute, nothing alive. This is a hellscape, and this is not the future of humanity. And Gates invests in those lab-grown meats and plant-based substitutes that rely on land where the soil is being destroyed to take off the corn, which he can then transform into something that vaguely resembles human food but lacks bioavailable nutrients. Research from Stanford highlights how those alternatives miss critical amino acids that are found in real food, and that's not even talking about the glyphosate contamination. Lab-grown foods are resource-intensive, they require massive energy inputs to produce, they're not sustainable at all. In contrast, regenerative farming practices sequester carbon in the soil. They grow healthy, rich soil, and it makes foods that are good for you because they contain nutrients. When you support the regenerative distributed farming system, it's not good for billionaire food conglomerates, but it's really good for your health and for the environment around your home. And it's good for small farmers who are getting destroyed by corporate interests. I come from Silicon Valley. I worked in startups and high-tech companies and cloud computing, and I made millions from them. So I understand the mentality of the tech elites. They think the solution to everything is a single brilliant innovation that everyone uses. And actually, I love using technology to solve problems in the world. But what doesn't work is centralizing everything. Centralized control always fails. And Bill Gates' vision of food security leans on centralization, but decentralization is the key to resilience for your food. And heck, even for currencies, decentralized currencies are all the rage for a reason. Because when it's distributed, it's hard to control and corrupt people can't steal your stuff, including your health or your cows. If you focus on large-scale, tech-driven solutions, well, you're going to create a dependence on a few corporations that control the global food supply. It's not just me saying that. There's a study published in Global Environmental Change highlighting that diverse, localized food systems are more resilient to economic and environmental shocks. Centralized systems are vulnerable to disruptions like pandemics or even just corruption, where someone with a lot of power decides to take food from your country and give it to another country. And if you don't like it, well, you got nothing to eat and nothing you can do. Decentralized models, which allow local regenerative farms and community-supported agriculture, it means everyone can have food. You have sustainable, nutrient-rich food, and your community gets empowered to take control of their health and resources. Now, the people in power are going to tell you, it might not be safe. We're taking away your food for your own safety. And your job is to say, I choose danger. I will take the risk of having a local farm with high-quality food versus the risk of having someone make fake food in a centralized place far away from me that's laced with poison. You just don't want to make that trade-off. I think it's important that you think about keeping the earth safe and healthy, but you're not going to do that if you are not safe and healthy and well-nourished. I love how I look, how I feel now, and that was not true when I was in my 20s and I was 300 pounds. I felt like crap. I didn't look very good either. I tried being a raw vegan. I tried being a regular vegan. I tried everything. Bottom line is, I will eat the foods that make me feel powerful and young and healthy. And I'm going to do that at all costs. And that means I'm going to support local agriculture. It means I built a regenerative farm. It means I raise my kids on animal food and plant food that we raise ourselves. And there is so much science that shows the health benefits of eating high quality, clean animal protein and animal fat, that we cannot throw that out and ignore the consequences of eating fake food because someone ran a bunch of ads telling us it was good for us when it wasn't.